But I mean, I had trouble fight. I mean, I rented it, so I played it on game files that were still saved to the actual game itself. So I do that. So I would get someone else's game files, and so I played someone that moved very far, maybe someone that was not. Maybe I tried it starting on my own, but I still had trouble playing it. I had no idea of where to go. And it's that's like one of the issues you can have with the earlier games. Like you go back and play those games when there's almost not much narrative.
Yeah, and that's the thing. There's no narrative.
Yeah.
Apparently, most of the narrative came from the manga.
Yeah. A lot of backstory.
Yeah.
But yeah, we can get into that. We can get into that whole idea of narrative or so later in another discussion. But it's just something, an idea that'd be interesting.
I mean, I will still. I don't. Like for me, I know it didn't do the greatest, but I will still take a remake.
Yeah,
if they will make it.
The only thing sequel.
Yeah.
Sequel.
Yeah. The only thing that they have done with it is they made Minecraft skins of those characters.
Yeah.
And that was like the closest thing.
Yeah, you try to Google. Well, I'm sorry, not Google it, but I guess Bing it on Xbox Live, and that's basically what comes up or so. Those skins. I tried it myself because I was curious about it. But you have that, or so you got into that game back with something that wasn't received too well, but it was interesting nonetheless. For me, it was somewhat received well, that it warranted quite a few sequels, but I feel like it went in a bad direction. I mean, I feel like, for this example, I feel like it's sequels that should have stopped at a certain point. I was really into the PlayStation classic Syphon Filter. I love the story on that, about where they're trying to take down stop a virus, basically known as Syphon Filter, and it's this whole government agency conspiracy, not like a whole government thing, but just an agency conspiracy with all these people trying to make a profit on spreading the virus, keeping the cure for themselves, and you being the agents that you were turned on by your own agency, and you're trying to take them down. It spanned out on the PS1 on 3 games. The first one, and then the second one. The first one.
I never played it though.
The first one was there, and then the second one came out, and then the third one was more of like a hearing or so, where you're like going back and chronicling all these other encounters with the Syphon Filter or the people that you know from the game or so. It was interesting, but it seemed a little weird or so as a third game. And then it sort of ended in a way, but left room for another. The Syphon Filter virus is still available, and this person that you've been after the whole time still kind of got away. And so when they made a fourth game, which they changed it up a bit. They had the characters that you were in the previous games, they were in charge, and you were no longer playing those characters, except for these bonus missions that you had to unlock or so by doing them out of content. Otherwise, you create your own character, and it's team-based, so you have to head in and take them out with a team. Oh, you want to put your IR scanner so you can see them when they're visible. Yeah. And it wasn't a bad idea. It's a little rough because it was played like an online game. So like when you screw up or so, you're going to keep going or so, and you can't really reload it. You can't reload your save or whatever. You have to restart the mission completely. Even if you're offline, it played like it was online. And I wish it was not all focused on online, because at that point I didn't have I didn't have the compatibility that Xbox Live has. And when I was so used to it, it was an all-new process to me, and I just didn't know how to use it. Plus, I didn't have anyone that had the game with it, so I just couldn't get it done. But there were some interesting aspects to it. The way they wrapped up the story, it was interesting. Was the character I mentioned that they kept always trying to get, or so, it wasn't like the main person behind the Syphon Filter conspiracy, though you finally found out who. But this person that was always a constant theme in the whole thing, who was always like a part of it, but not the main person, she's finally taken out. And when they made these other PSP sequels, which was where I differ on where they should have gone with the game, obviously the Syphon Filter threat was eliminated with the fourth game, and there was no more Syphon Filter, but it still had the characters, and it was just a weird There's like weird stories that happen. Yeah.
Try to keep it going.
Yeah, they try to keep it going or so, even though Syphon Filter is done or so. And even some other weird stuff. But the one thing that really bothered me is they had a certain what was it? They had a certain bonus mission where you were a guy who mostly took out that girl that I met, the person that was always a part of it that you finally took out at the end of the 4th game. They redid that where you actually shot her, but they added another crazy element to the game that basically that she was a lesbian lover with another character that was a feature in there, and it was just so ridiculous, and you had to take them both out, and it just made me feel like they're just throwing everything away or so on that. So just sometimes they can go wrong with sequels, like where it didn't need any more sequels after the 4th one. And if anything, maybe they could reboot that, but I don't know, maybe not though. I like the way they were, and they're just stories themselves.
I remember hearing about it like when I was younger, but I never got a chance to play it.
Yeah, it was a little underrated, but it did have some problems or so I can't say it's like one of the defining games, but I enjoyed it. Just sometimes there's those bad games that certain people just can't help but like or so. And I guess for me that was definitely one of them. It wasn't a big popular great game, but I enjoyed it. Of course, there have been some other sequels that weren't as good.
weren't as good as the
original, but they were still decent in their own right. Sometimes it's just such a big shadow, but also other issues get in the way. I don't think there's any more Invisible Guys. One thing I can think of example of Knights of the Old Republic, the sequel, the Sith Lords, was a decent follow-up. It added a lot more complexity and I guess you can say gray to an otherwise very black and white genre. I mean, Star Wars itself has always been black and white, the light and the dark, but it added, in the story itself, it added a bit of the gray or so, like your Jedi/Sith teacher or so in the game was teaching you sort of a middle route a lot of times. Like, one prime example of that is just you go on this planet, you arrive on your ship, and someone asks you for money. And there's a little bit of dialogue, you can try to avoid it, but basically it comes down to two choices. You give the person money and be nice to them, or you tell them to piss off in a real mean tone and they just run off all pissed off. And either way, it doesn't matter which. This was a narrative choice basically by the developers, but either way they get the teacher chimes in, like either if she's with your group or not, she talks to you telepathically and tells you that was a bad choice. No matter if it was good or bad, tells you the consequences.
Always a bad choice.
Like,
it was very hard to impress her.
Yeah, it's like she was very difficult. She's a very difficult character, but interesting nonetheless. Like, what I mean by that is that when you choose the good one, then it's like, oh, he gave money, but then someone else is going to see that and then attack the person and take their money from them.
Right.
And then the other thing was, if you told them to piss off, they would be upset and they would take their aggressions out on someone else who didn't deserve it.
Right.
So just either way, your actions, your sort of intervention would create another problem or so.
Right.
It was an interesting thought process. It's not something that's often displayed in the Star Wars universe, which, like I said, more gray than any other Star Wars or so. And you want to talk about a decent sequel?
Yeah, a decent sequel,
but not it couldn't live up to the other one.
Right.
Bioshock.
Well, Bioshock 2, yeah. I actually never played it.
You never played it?
I never played Bioshock.
Oh, I'm sorry, I should have had you talk about that.
No, but I mean, Code Car 2 was good in the fact that, like, I felt like I was really playing an RPG. Like, I could really play the character I wanted to play. Like, I didn't feel completely dictated by what the game wanted me to do.
Yeah. One of the things that they mentioned about is that it was rushed. It was it was rushed too bad. They were trying to get the game out, and it wasn't complete. That's the problem with it.
Yeah, they were missing a lot of content. There was actually, they found like audio, or they found a bunch of files.
Yeah.
Proving that they,
could have done more, but they could have done more at the time.
Yeah.
And it was a different developer. also like what I'll mention about Bioshock 2. I mean, it couldn't compare in comparison to the original Bioshock because that was such a classic. And just we can go into more about what it is or so itself, but even but the sequel, where I really liked it is that it improved upon the gameplay of the original. I mean, the original, you had your plasmid feature and you had your guns or so, and you had to switch between the two. You couldn't use them both at the same time. You would have to switch between them back and forth. There'd be a slight delay when you want to use a plasmid or use a... I think she's just stuck twisted. They're all stuck twisted now.
Yeah, they're all twisty.
Oh, well.
Oh, no,
maybe it's your down mode. So, yeah. Using her telekinesis to
maybe I have to stop sidestepping.
Maybe that's, I don't know what it is. Anyway, so they improved upon it where you can use them both at the same time, and that was a great feature. And also, it's somewhat a little cheap too, that when you're almost dead, because you could die a lot in the original Bioshock, and it was kind of got annoying or so, where you'd be stuck in this resurrection chamber or whatever they called it, I forget the name. And just have to redo what you just did or so, because you can reload a save too, but also it can have a little cost or so with it. But what you could do in this one is that you can pause the game or go to your quick menu to change to plasmids or guns or so, and you have an option to use a metapack, so you can heal yourself while you're sort of paused, and that really gives you an edge or so over your enemies, and you don't have to worry about
oh, so you can use a metapack pause.
Yeah, pause, and you can pause from the action and basically use a metapack. It wasn't exactly a pause.
That reminds me of Knights of the Old Republic, like, you know, you have to die. And
that you could do that in Knights of the Old Republic yourself, where you found yourself just almost dying, you can pause and use your metapacks and all that stuff. Yeah, it was interesting, and it was building upon the universe building upon the world of Rapture, adding another aspect of it, but it just was not as groundbreaking as the original.
Right.
But they had a different sequel, and that wasn't even made by the same people like KOTOR. So I mean, BioWare stepped down. It was Obsidian that did the sequel, and
I think they would have did a good job if they didn't have such a time constraint.
Yeah, it's because they were going in a very bold and different direction for Star Wars. But as for the Bioshock, they just wanted. I think they thought people wanted to go back to Rapture or so, but and Kevin Levine, the guy who originally created Bioshock, he wasn't a part of this sequel, but it was decent for what they did. But it's just it's hard to compare when that bar is so high on that one.
Well, the president, of course.
Yeah.